So in your opinion, who influenced the NBA the most in the 2000s? You might say Michael Jordan, coming from the late 90s, winning all those championships. You might say Shaquille O'Neal. I'm going to say Kobe and AI. Let me know. I came up with 5 reasons why Kobe and AI were the most influential players of the 2000s, at least the early 2000s, as they were drafted in the mid-90s. And I just wanted to explore the topic on Covering Sports. So we got to start off with the legendary 1996 NBA draft. You had countless All-Stars, 5 Hall of Famers and counting, and you had AI at the number 1 pick, with Kobe Bryant being the number 13th pick, who ended up going to the Lakers from the Hornets at that time. But that was an awesome draft. Those 5 Hall of Famers are, of course, Kobe Bryant, AI, Steve Nash, Ben Wallace, and Ray Allen. Great players who all had different careers, different levels of development throughout the years, so it's pretty intriguing to see that. Look up the 1996 draft if you want to be amazed. It's arguably the best draft outside of the 1984 draft with Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, John Stockton, etc., Charles Barkley, or the 03 draft with LeBron, not Steve Nash, D Wade, Carmelo. Those were awesome drafts, a lot of All-Stars and Hall of Famers as well. But they literally kicked their careers off in the most legendary way. Kobe being drafted straight out of high school for the 13th pick. AI, it's arguable that he would have been drafted straight out of high school in, I think, 1993, but he got in trouble. I believe 1993, 1994, he would have been drafted out of high school, but he got in that trouble. Anywho, they kicked off the career in such a legendary way, being drafted as both lottery picks, 1 and 13th. And throughout their career, they battled each other, and that's a great way to start. When I think of the influence of Allen Iverson and the Kobe Bryant, I always think of And1, because And1 was so popular in the early 2000s and the late 90s. And And1 was basically a streetball league that toured around the country and performed or played on the court. I say performed because they remind me of a more modern Harlem Globetrotters, even though I believe the Harlem Globetrotters were performing in the 2000s. And1 was basically the updated, more modern version of the Harlem Globetrotters. And Kobe and AI, they brought that raw element of handling the ball, because in Kobe's earlier years, he was a little more loose with the ball and a lot more reminiscent of a street ball player, because he was younger and he matured his game and got sharper. But when he first came in, he was much more raw and it was more street ball like, reminiscent of an And1 player. And AI, of course, with the crossover on Michael Jordan, one of the most legendary moments in NBA history. And I think it's even more awesome when you put into perspective that when Michael Jordan was playing in the 86 playoffs against the Celtics, he has a moment that went not viral, but is pretty popular of a clip. He crosses Larry Bird, hits a jump shot, and then you have the version in which AI crosses Michael Jordan, hits the jump shot. And that pretty much, to me, defined the shift that the game was going in, the direction it was going in, and basically the passing of the torch from the old generation to the new generation, basically from MJ's hands to Kobe's hands, or MJ's influence to AI's influence, because AI to me is the most influential player outside of Michael Jordan, and it's arguably he's more influential in the sense of off the court, not on the court. But man, when I think of those two players, it's not too many who had that impact. They had the icon level with the AI having braids and the jewelry and the tattoos, and just his avatar, people followed and copied. It was pretty awesome. And then Kobe, of course, he had the number 8 with the fro. Very cool shoes when he was with Adidas. It was just an awesome time growing up. But when I think about what they've contributed to the game, I always think of their raw And1 style and their mentalities. The never die easy with Allen Iverson and the Mamba mentality with Kobe Bryant. It's a beautiful thing to see. What also brings these two players together is throughout their career, they were both listed or labeled as ball hogs. So they were two players that if you played with them, they weren't going to average a lot of assists. They definitely were going to average a lot of points unless they were injured, or even if they were injured. AI and Kobe were the type of players to play with broken fingers, fractured this, fractured that. They just were very dedicated to the game. Some would call them ball hogs, but in my eyes growing up, I started to understand more that if you're dedicating yourself like a Kobe, or you're ultra talented like AI, of course you want the ball in their hands 80% of the time, because who's going to outperform a Kobe Bryant? Who's going to outperform an Allen Iverson? People call him pound for pound the greatest player alive, or the greatest player ever, because he's like 5'11", 6'1", with all that talent and handle. Only player to rival that talent and handle is Kyrie Irving, who's playing great right now. But getting back to it, They are labeled as ball hogs, but you got to ask yourself, if you're building a team with a Kobe Bryant and the AI, are there going to be anybody, or is it going to be anybody on the team that you rather have the ball? And that's a question you really got to ask yourself. And you got to think about it. They both were drafted in 1996, so they ushered in the 2000s, because literally the year 2000 was their 4th, 5th season in the league. They both started on their teams at that point. AI was in multiple All-Star games at that point, as well as Kobe. And they both represented their respective conferences. So you had a dog in the East with AI on the 76ers, and you had a dog on the West with Kobe and Shaq on the Lakers. Of course, as you know, Kobe and Shaq, they had the three-peat, legendary teams, an assortment of great role players, great coach and Phil Jackson. They just had a great organization. Jerry West, I believe, was in the general manager position. Jerry Buss was still alive, rest in peace. But it was great to see that as a kid, you had two players, one on each side of the country, who was making the game ultra popular for the kids born in the 90s or the kids born in the late 80s growing up. They made it so exciting to watch. And you really can't pick two players more legendary when you're talking about the early 2000s. Now, when LeBron and KD come in, you get a different type of energy in the game. But as far as from the mid 90s to 2000, you could say 8, you got to give it to AI and Kobe. And last but not least, I spoke on the iconic moments they've had on the NBA court, but I just wanted to elaborate. As Kobe had the 81 points against, the Toronto Raptors, and I think 2006 he had the 81 points, but he was on the tear 05 to 06. I think he averaged 35 points. He scored 62 against the Dallas Mavericks in 3 quarters, I believe. So the 81 was just ridiculous. And then for Kobe, you also had that legendary 98 All-Star game in which he was going against Michael Jordan. And that was the first time a lot of people got to see Kobe as a youngin' and his mentality basically flourish on the court, as he had only been playing in the league 2 years basically. And he already was showing that he was the future basically. He wanted it like nobody else. He was doing lobs. He just was so doggish in that game, and just him interacting with Michael, it made for a lot of great pictures and not memes or gifs, but just clips that we can watch to this day, and they can put them in documentaries. And you got to give it to AI outside of crossing MJ, the legendary Tyronn Lue step over. There's so many players that when we were in high school, middle school, elementary school, they wanted to reenact that moment, but nobody had as cold as a crossover as AI, I think, until Kyrie Irving. So of course, them being some of the best players in the world, you won't see that at a high school game a lot of the times, but that was one of the most legendary moments, and it was definitely the most legendary moments in that finals, and you can say it was the most legendary moments of that first 5 years of the 2000s. The Tyronn Lue step over, AI winning game 1 with Mutombo and the 76ers and Tony Snow. Cool team, but AI really took them to the top. And when I'm talking about Kobe and AI, they bring so many different memories of just being prolific, dedicated to the game, influencing players through fashion, freedom, and dedication, discipline. AI, not so much, but he had the practice rant, another iconic moment, but he still was dedicated. His talent just compensated for his lack of practice. Even though he probably did practice, it was just a running joke. But that's what I got. Follow, like, subscribe. I appreciate you guys watching. We got more coming on the way. This is Covering Sports. Thank you.